My Christian landlord trashed her own house to steal my $3,000 deposit, so I sent the hidden camera footage to her insurance company. My phone buzzed with a Venmo notification for $4,000, cutting through the silence of my dark living room just as the 12th consecutive call from Mrs. Sterling lit up my cracked screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail, staring at the loaded police report glowing on my laptop monitor, savoring the exact, agonizing moment her fabricated, hypocritical world burned completely to ash. The skin on my knuckles was still cracked and bleeding from the bleach. For 48 straight hours, I had existed on nothing but stale tap water and pure, unfiltered anxiety, scrubbing every square inch of that 3-bedroom rental until the grout lines shined like bleached bone. I used toothbrushes on the air vents. I used Q-tips on the sliding glass door tracks. I inhaled so much ammonia I was tasting metal behind my molars. I wasn't just cleaning, I was fighting a preemptive war against my landlord, Mrs. Sterling. She was a woman who weaponized her religion the way other people use pepper spray. Every interaction we ever had was drenched in a suffocating layer of judgment. "We don't rent to just anyone, Elisa," she hissed at me during our initial walkthrough a year ago, her manicured finger aggressively tapping a leather-bound clipboard. "My husband and I pride ourselves on our Christian integrity. We expect this property to reflect the godly, immaculate standards we uphold in our own home." I needed my $3,000 security deposit back. It wasn't vacation money. It wasn't a luxury fund. It was my survival safety net, the exact amount I needed to cover first and last month's rent at my new apartment across town without defaulting on my car loan. I knew Mrs. Sterling was the type of landlord who would try to charge me $300 for a microscopic scuff mark on a baseboard, so I built an ironclad defense. Before locking the heavy oak front door for the absolute last time, I pulled out my phone and recorded a continuous, unedited 20-minute video. I walked slowly through the empty, echoing house. I filmed the pristine carpets, still damp from the professional steam cleaner I'd rented. I filmed the inside of the oven, scrubbing the lens right up against the spotless glass. I panned across the sprawling, custom bay window in the living room, capturing the afternoon sunlight refracting through the flawless panes. The house wasn't just clean, it was a sterile, showroom masterpiece. But in the chaotic, sweating rush of hauling heavy cardboard boxes and a lumpy mattress into the back of a rented U-Haul, my exhausted brain dropped a single detail. High up in the kitchen, resting on top of the 7-foot custom oak cabinetry, sat a decorative, dusty plastic pothose planter, and tucked perfectly out of sight behind its fake, draping green leaves was my battery-powered Ring indoor camera. I originally bought the little black cube because the neighborhood had a history of package thefts, but I kept it in the kitchen to keep an eye on my newly adopted rescue dog while I was at work. In the blur of the move, I left it sitting in the shadows, quietly recording the empty kitchen counter. For 5 days, I slept soundly in my new apartment. I unpacked. I organized. I allowed the knots of tension in my shoulders to finally unravel. I was free of Mrs. Sterling and her suffocating inspections. I was just waiting on the certified check to arrive in the mail. Then came Tuesday morning. I was standing at my new kitchen island, blowing steam off a cheap mug of black coffee, when my phone chimed with an email notification. The sender was Mrs. Sterling. The subject line read, "Security deposit forfeiture and outstanding balance invoices." My chest seized. A heavy, suffocating block of ice dropped straight into the pit of my stomach. My fingers were trembling so violently I almost dropped the mug onto the floor as I tapped the screen to open the attached 10-page PDF. It was a masterclass in extortion. The first page was a meticulously formatted, aggressively worded letter claiming I had completely destroyed her pristine property. She wasn't just withholding the entire $3,000. She was demanding an additional $1,500 for what she called structural restoration and biohazard removal. I swiped to the second page, and my vision immediately went blurry with a blinding, white-hot rage. The attached photos looked like a literal war zone. The pristine living room I had spent hours vacuuming was desecrated. A crude, neon red spray-painted symbol was plastered directly across the textured beige drywall. The custom, multi-pane bay window I had filmed just days prior was utterly shattered, jagged teeth of glass hanging precariously from the wooden frame. But the kitchen was the ultimate nightmare. The gleaming hardwood floors were completely invisible beneath a thick, glittering layer of smashed glass, crushed aluminum beer cans, and dark, sticky puddles of what looked like dried liquor. My lungs forgot how to pull an oxygen. I leaned my weight against the counter, reading her typed words over and over again. "Due to the malicious, catastrophic vandalism inflicted upon the property, you have 24 hours to remit the remaining remaining $1,500 balance, or our legal counsel will immediately file a civil suit and garnish your wages. I was entirely trapped. She had photographic proof of a trashed house. I had my walkthrough video, but in the eyes of a judge, a landlord could easily argue that I came back later that night and threw a revenge party just to spite her. It was a classic he said she said scenario, and landlords with expensive lawyers always win those battles. I felt the heat rising in my neck, the metallic taste of pure adrenaline flooding the back of my throat. I was literally reaching for my car keys, fully prepared to drive over to her house and kick her front door off its reinforced hinges. That's when the real bombshell dropped. My thumb accidentally brushed the top of my phone screen, pulling down my notification center. Buried under a pile of useless marketing emails and social media updates was a push notification from the Ring app, dated Wednesday night at 11:42 p.m. Motion detected. Kitchen. The air in my lungs froze. I hadn't disconnected the fiber optic Wi-Fi router at the old house yet because my contract ran strictly through the end of the month, and I refused to pay the $70 early cancellation fee. The internet was still live. The battery in the camera was still charged. My heart began to hammer a chaotic, violent rhythm against my ribs. Expecting to see a masked burglar or a squatter rummaging through the empty cabinets, I pressed my thumb against the notification and let the app pull up the encrypted cloud storage. The buffering circle spun for 2 agonizing seconds before snapping into crystal clear, 1080p high definition. I didn't see a burglar. I saw a 19-year-old kid wearing a backwards red snapback hat and a faded university hoodie. I immediately recognized the sharp jawline and the arrogant smirk. It was Tyler, Mrs. Sterling's son. Behind him, piling through the back patio door, were 4 other guys hauling dirty red Solo cups and a massive, dented aluminum beer keg. They weren't breaking in. Tyler had casually unlocked the deadbolt using his mother's shiny brass spare key. I sat down on a nearby dining chair because my legs were shaking too hard to hold my own body weight. I watched in total, sickening silence as these overgrown frat boys began throwing empty beer cans against the freshly painted drywall. But the absolute climax of this horrific cinematic masterpiece hadn't even started yet. At exactly the 2-minute mark of the recording, the front door swung open. The camera's highly sensitive microphone picked up the sharp, commanding click-clack of expensive heels echoing on the hardwood. Into the frame stepped Mrs. Sterling. She was wearing a beige cashmere cardigan, her signature silver cross necklace gleaming under the recessed kitchen lighting. She clutched a designer leather purse in her left hand. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look angry. She looked like a general commanding a battlefield. "Make sure you get the glass everywhere, Tyler," she commanded, her shrill voice cutting perfectly through the audio feed. She pointed a perfectly manicured acrylic nail directly at the granite kitchen island. "We need to make it look like a riot so the insurance covers the entire kitchen remodel. And we keep that girl's deposit for the damages. Do not scratch the stainless steel appliances, do you hear me? Relax, Mom, I know how to throw a fake rager." Tyler laughed, his voice dripping with unbearable privilege. I watched, paralyzed in a state of euphoric horror, as Tyler effortlessly hoisted the heavy, empty metal keg above his shoulder. He walked perfectly into the center of the frame, wound up his entire body, and hurled the massive block of aluminum straight through the custom bay window. The explosive sound of shattering glass physically distorted the camera's microphone, leaving a split second of digital static before the audio returned to the sound of his frat brothers cheering like wild animals. They were committing felony insurance fraud, and they were framing me for it. I didn't call Mrs. Sterling to argue. I didn't scream into a pillow. A dark, terrifying sense of calm washed over my entire body, cooling the boiling rage in my veins into something sharper, something far more dangerous. I was no longer a victim. I was the executioner. Moving with the methodical precision of a surgeon, I downloaded the full, 4-hour recording. I backed up the MP4 files directly to my laptop's hard drive. I uploaded them to a secure Google Drive folder. I transferred them to an external thumb drive. I even emailed the raw files to a trusted attorney friend who specialized in tenant rights, just in case my house spontaneously caught fire. Once the digital cage was perfectly constructed, I opened my email client and drafted a new message. I didn't write a 10-page manifesto. I didn't stoop to her level of passive-aggressive, pseudo-religious manipulation. I kept it brutally, clinically brief. I took a 30-second clip of the footage, the exact 30 seconds containing her damning instructions and the window shattering, and attached it to the email. The subject line read, "Evidence of felony insurance fraud and vandalism." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing out the final nail in her coffin. "I see you've decided to remodel the kitchen on my dime. It's a bold strategy. Unfortunately for you, I forgot my hidden camera on the cabinets. I have the full, unedited 4-hour recording in 1080p, featuring crystal clear audio of you coaching your son on exactly how to trash the house to commit insurance fraud. My entire $3,000 security deposit is due back immediately. Furthermore, I've added a $1,000 discovery fee to compensate for the emotional distress of watching my former home be desecrated by your family. My deadline is 5 p.m. today. If the full $4,000 isn't resting securely in my account, the local police department and your homeowner's insurance provider get the full, high-definition director's cut at exactly 5:01 p.m. I took a deep breath, staring at the blue send button. The silence in my new apartment felt heavy, pregnant with the weight of absolute destruction. I clicked the mouse. The email vanished into the digital ether. Then, the agonizing countdown began. The clock on my microwave blinked 2 p.m. I paced the length of my living room, my bare feet slapping softly against the cold laminate flooring. I imagined the exact moment she opened the email. I imagined her sitting in her immaculate, cross-decorated living room, sipping iced tea, fully believing she had just successfully robbed a 20-something girl of her life savings. I imagined the smug smile instantly melting off her perfectly powdered face as Tyler's voice blasted through her laptop speakers. By 3:30 p.m., the silence was starting to make me nauseous. Doubt began to creep into the edges of my mind. What if she called my bluff? What if she had friends in the local precinct? What if she just ignored the email entirely? My stomach twisted into a tight, painful knot. I chewed on the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. At 4:15 p.m., my phone screen suddenly flashed bright white. The caller ID displayed, Elisa Sterling, Landlord. I didn't move a muscle. I just stood there in the center of the room, watching the phone vibrate violently across the wooden surface of the dining table. It rang until it hit voicemail. 3 seconds later, it started ringing again. Then again. Then again. She was panicking. The walls of her fake, holy roller empire were collapsing in real time, and she was desperately clawing at the rubble trying to find a way out. I watched her call 12 consecutive times. I could practically hear the hyperventilating, the frantic excuses forming in her throat, the desperate begging she was preparing to unleash the second I answered. I didn't touch the phone. I let the absolute terror of the unknown marinate in her veins. At exactly 4:45 p.m., the phone stopped ringing. For a long, terrifying minute, the screen was completely black. Then, a sharp, distinct chime echoed through the apartment. The bright blue Venmo notification banner dropped down from the top of my screen. $4,000 from Eleanor Sterling. The transaction note was completely empty. No emojis, no passive-aggressive blessings, just absolute, total surrender. The heavy, suffocating weight I had been carrying for weeks evaporated in an instant. A slow, dark smile stretched across my face as I picked up the phone. I opened our text thread, staring at the endless scroll of her previous demands and threats. I typed out one final message, my thumbs flying across the digital keyboard with the precision of a striking snake. The money was for the deposit. The police report is for the crime. Integrity is expensive, isn't it? I hit send. Then, without a moment of hesitation, I opened a new browser window, navigated to the local police department's anonymous tip portal, and uploaded the entire 4-hour MP4 file. I copied the link and sent a simultaneous email to her listed property insurance provider. She thought $4,000 was going to buy my silence. She forgot that I didn't care about the money anymore. I cared about absolute justice. Mrs. Sterling is currently drowning in the consequences of her own arrogance. She is under an active, aggressive investigation for felony insurance fraud. And because Tyler brought his underage fraternity brothers along for the destruction, she's also facing severe charges for contributing to the delinquency of minors. The insurance company dropped her policy completely, meaning she has to pay for the shattered bay window and the ruined hardwood floors straight out of her own pocket. As for me, I used that extra $1,000 discovery fee to buy the most expensive, state-of-the-art security system on the market for my new home. This time, I didn't hide them behind a dusty plastic plant. I mounted them in plain sight, directly at eye level, a permanent warning to anyone who thinks they can step into my life and manipulate the truth. Am I the monster here for taking the money and still reporting her, or did she get exactly what she deserved?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.